In the name of Allah, a very warm good afternoon and assalamu alaikum to all of you. I welcome you all to the last day of this 7-day National Research Methodology Workshop. Today we have one lecture, and this lecture will be presented by Dr. Muhammad Zulquar Nain. A brief introduction about Muhammad Zulquar Nain, sir. Dr. Zulquar Nain is an assistant professor in the Department of Economics at Aligarh Muslim University. Prior to his appointment at AMU in 2008, he worked as assistant professor at Manu, Hyderabad. Dr. Zulquar Nain did his graduation from AMU and later on did his and PhD in economics from University of Hyderabad. In recognition of his academic excellence, he was honored with the prestigious RBI Faculty Fellowship in 2020, a testament to his exceptional research capabilities. His research contributions are reflected in his 15 publications in well-regarded national and international journals, including those ranked by the Australian Business Dean Council. He has also contributed 4 book chapters and 15 research papers in various conferences and seminars. Dr. Zulquar Nain's current research focuses on several vital areas, including monetary economics, energy economics, and international trade. By delving into these domains, he seeks to uncover valuable insights and contribute to the existing knowledge and understanding of economic systems. His dedication to rigorous research and analytical thinking allows him to address key issues and challenges in these areas. Dr. Muhammad Zulquar Nain's active involvement in research community, his pursuit of academic excellence, and his commitment to imparting knowledge make him an invaluable contributor to the field of economics. His participation in the research workshop is bound to enrich the scholarly discussions and inspire fellow scholars and researchers and students alike. Today, we are extremely happy to have him with us, and he will speak on the topic formation and testing of hypothesis. Dr. Muhammad Zulquar Nain, sir. Please welcome him on the stage.
Okay, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum. And first of all, thank you so much for this nice introduction. I was hoping then and expecting, and my ideal strategy is simple. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Economics. That introduction suits me, and I'm always happy with that. So whenever you call me in next event, please try to keep that introduction. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Economics. That's simple. Before starting this topic, because I'm seeing a good pattern here to start my topic here, because most of you have scattered here in around, someone is in the last despite having the seat here in the beginning. So why we have that situation? Some people in the front, some people in the last bench why we have that situation? Does it reflect that we are the research scholars? Can we testify that all the people who are sitting here, they are scholars by looking at the crowd? Yes or no? मेरे लेक्चर में सवाल बहुत होते हैं, प्लीज बी रेडी फॉर द आंसर्स. तो हम ये पूछ रहे हैं कि जो अभी स्कैटर्ड लोग बैठे हैं, अगर इस क्राउड को आप बाहर से आके देख रहे हैं, कैन यू गेस दैट ऑल दीज आर द रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स? यस और नो? अगर नहीं तो क्यों नहीं? अगर कुछ लोग कह रहे हैं कि नहीं, इस क्राउड को देख के हम नहीं कह सकते ये वर्कशॉप चल रहा है और ये सारे स्कॉलर्स हैं, नहीं है, क्यों? आप ऐसा ओपिनियन क्यों रखते हैं? और अगर ऐसा क्राउड आप नहीं देखते तो व्हाट यू हैव इन योर माइंड? यार कुछ तो बोलो फ्रॉम एनी साइड. आपने ये जवाब क्यों दिया कि इस क्राउड को देख के हम ये एक्सपेक्ट नहीं कर सकते दे आर द स्कॉलर्स? Yeah, one very nice interpretation. Anyone who does not agree with this crowd? If someone comes from the outside, he doesn't know or he doesn't see the banners, or even if sees the banners, he may not be agree that this crowd is of the research scholars. Why? Because we have preconceived notion. If the workshop is going on, there will be a systematic pattern, seat arrangement, people will sit there. Or if they are the research scholars, they will make an arrangement. Sitting arrangement will not be scattered, it will be systematic. So that's what we have preconceived notion. By looking at the research, by looking at the different academic research workshop has happened, or by looking at the classes, whenever the students sit, they will sit in a systematic way, rows by rows. If the first row filled, then they will shift to the second row. So that's the basically preconceived idea we have. Then we compare from that statement to the existing situation we have. And basically this hypothesis formulation testing is nothing but the same. You have conceived idea, whether it's based on your knowledge, whether based on your history, whether based on your theory, whether based on your research, anything. You have that idea. Based on that, you predict, you expect a certain kind of outcome. That is nothing but is known as the hypothesis. So that's what for example, here, if you honestly ask anyone, what hypothesis we have? The scholars will sit in a systematic pattern. But that now we have to compare, then we have to take the different other observations, then we testify whether our observation is true or not. For example, let us come to that part testing here. For example, what we observed here, they are not scattered, but the fact says they are the research scholars. So that means either my assumption, hypothesis was false, or this observation is by chance. So that part, whether whatever I'm observing, that part is by chance, or is it the pattern? To testify that, the second part, what we call hypothesis testing. I hope, and when I have seen that lecture schedules, most of the hypothesis testing part might have get covered. For example, when we have talked t-test or ANOVA or the different steps, the people might have covered this testing part. Have you covered the t-test or ANOVA and all? Has this been topics has been covered here? T-test or ANOVA or F-test or chi-square test? Yaar, हाँ या ना? Has it been covered? No. Okay. So let me come to the first part, hypothesis formulation. क्यों कर रहा है? First, I will the whole lecture schedule, basically, which is also the steps for the hypothesis testing. So basically, we formulate the hypothesis. One of the important part, what happened over the years, what I observed, most of the scholars, we focus a lot on the testing part, how we'll test a hypothesis, but we do not focus much on the formulation of hypothesis, and that has been including me. Earlier in my career, I usually focused on the testing part, which kind of test I should use, how to testify those. But later on, I understand that, and I observe it is quite important to the formulation part, how you formulate your hypothesis. That is very crucial also, because which leads which kind of test you will use. For example, then we'll select appropriate test, then to choose the level of significance, then there goes the two-way to verify or testify that. One, either you can use the probabilistic approach, or you can use the value approach, the critical value. So again here, Then if you are going the probability value, then use the compare with the level of significance, or if you are going to the critical value approach, then determine the test statistics critical value, which will be given in the table, but both will lead you the same conclusion, either reject or do not reject the null hypothesis. Then draw the interpretation depending on what kind of problem you have. So let us say the hypothesis testing. So basically hypothesis is nothing, your predicted outcome, what you are having. What you think, what kind of relations will be there between the two variables, or if I am doing an experiment, what kind of outcome I can predict, I will observe. That is nothing but the hypothesis. Now here is the little difference. There is the one which we call educated guess. We know the process, we know the which kind of activity I am going to do, or which kind of experiment I am going to do. So basically you know the surroundings, then you predict the guess. So that is known as the educated guess. You have the information. But that is not known as the hypothesis. Hypothesis is little more than that. That is not enough to formulate the hypothesis. To formulate the hypothesis, not only up to that, in the surrounding you know, and based on that you predict some outcome. Rather than you have to have the information, if this is the information we have, what new information I can add, and using that information, how I can testify this formulation. Because that's the hypothesis formulation. Because whatever information you have, it has been never concerned for the research. Research is beyond those information. Either you add new information or you expand the scope of that information, then what happens? That's the basically research. And the hypothesis is related to for the research. Whether educated guess is just in the given particular situation where you doesn't want to add or expand any information. But in the research, always the objective has been to add the information or expand the information. So the hypothesis is regarding that if you change the level of information, then how you will testify. So if you do that, then it will help in the three ways. Basically helps to identify the samples, because based on that, what is your hypothesis, that will guide you what kind of sample I should choose. I will give you few examples, then it will clear us how it guides us. Then the describes relationship among the variables. It will specify what kind of relationship you are examining or what kind of relationship you are going to determine. Then inference about the population, which is basically the prime goal of any research we have. Then what are the good hypotheses, what are the characteristics we have? What is hypothesis is based on the research topic. For example, suppose I wanted to see or I wanted to examine, does attending class has any impact on the score of the students? This is my research question we have. Attending the class has effect on the score of the students. But I am forming this hypothesis, this. If the students are coming to the university, it will have effect on the performance. Is it a right hypothesis we are doing? Here the objective, does attending the class has an effect on the score or the performance of the students? And our hypothesis formulation is this, is if the students are coming to the university, does it has effect on the score? The hypothesis, does it serve the purpose of the research question? See, coming to the university is not necessary that he will attend the class. So if you keep this, it does not serve, it is not linked to your research question. It may be you will do the observation, you may find a positive relationship, because there is a different way. Because when the student comes to the university, he might get knowledge. Because that may help, because if once he comes to the university, he may meet his friends or her friends, so he may get the information. One my sessional is what kind of topic the teacher is teaching in the class. So that may have, if you run a regression, observe the data, run a regression or any test, you may have the positive effect. But this hypothesis is not related to your research topic or the research question. So that's, you may have the same, you may get the significance, you may get the positive aspect, the relationship, but that may not be related. So then identification of the dependent independent variables. So here it is necessary to that. For example, if my hypothesis is like this, regular students perform better in the class. Regular students perform better in the class. Now, to measure the performance, we know that is the dependent variable and regular class is the independent variable. So, to attain that, to measure the performance, we can have the scores. But what about the regular? How you will measure the regular? So, some people may say, obviously by looking the attendance. So, let us say out of 100, he is present in the 80 classes. Can I call him regular? So, out of 100, he attended 80 classes. Can I call him regular? Yes or no? Only two answers will be. Can I? एक मिनट. इसको ऑफ कर दिया. यार हाँ ना, आवाज आ रही है. स्टार्ट हो गया. इको हो रहा है मेरे ख्याल से बहुत ज्यादा. हेलो, मेरी आवाज बिना माइक के आ सकती है आपके? ये आवाज पीछे. ओके, अब आवाज आ रही है. इको हो रही है क्या बहुत ज्यादा? एनीवे, द क्वेश्चन वाज हियर दिस, लेट्स से सम स्टूडेंट्स अटेंडेंस 80 class out of 100. Can I call him regular student? Can I call him regular? No. There is subjectivity. Some teacher may call him regular. Some people may have their bar at the 90 class out of the 100 class. So here basically independent variable is not well defined and well measured. So whenever you have the hypothesis, you have to have a formulate your hypothesis in such a way where your variable is defined accurately and it is measured. There is no controversy. For example, let us talk about that. Economic growth creates happiness in the life. But again the question, how you will measure the happiness? So we cannot say that. And there is the, if you are doing such kind, you have to define earlier, okay, happiness by, I mean by this. Because that will bring you that other part which is basically falsifiable and testable, that is more important than other. Then it should be simple or the parsimony very straightforward. It is saying that rather than having a complex hypothesis, it's better to have multiple simple hypotheses. It is always keep. Then the third class is you are not concerned with the population. You are concerned with the population, not the sample. Basically what happened? Why we do the hypothesis testing? Basically, we are not able to accommodate or measure all the characteristics of whole population or the specific characteristics of a whole population. That's why we select some part sample and formulate the hypothesis. But usually what happens when we do or calculate, especially in the science and social science and arts, we do not have imagination of the population. Usually we have our observation on the sample, usually because that's what we face. So when we formulate hypothesis, we keep our mind on the sample, what kind of observation or what kind of characteristics, what kind of features, outcome we can predict from the sample, rather than our eyes should be on the population, what kind of information we wanted to have about the population. Therefore, our whole hypothesis should be concerned with the population, not from the sample. But the last two parts, the falsifiable and testable, that is more important in this. Because usually what happens is, as a researchers, we always try to reject the null hypothesis. That's have been tendency, that have been become the trend, because whenever we read any research, we read any thesis, usually what we observe, the null hypothesis has been rejected. In 99% cases, that's what we face. So usually what we see in our early research careers, whenever we are not able to reject the null hypothesis, we become very anxious. My study is not good, my method may not be good. But remember here, null hypothesis we formulate, not always to reject that. In history, it has been very remarkable that most of the critical research has been conducted when they were not able to reject the null hypothesis. So remember, whenever we formulate the hypothesis, the intention should not be always that we should reject that. So that brings the part falsifiable. Then the next question comes, then why in most of the cases we reject the null hypothesis? So the idea comes here, when we formulate hypothesis, in most of the time we keep our hypothesis in terms this. There is no relationship, there is no difference, there is no effect. The reason is this. The origin of hypothesis testing, where we have type 1 and type 2 error, has been started from this justice theory. Justice theory says that unless people are proven guilty, they are innocent. And the core of justice theory is this. An innocent person should not be convicted, a single, whether even you are able to or you have to leave 10 guilty people. That has been motto across the history of the justice system, and from there this whole type 1 error, type 2 error and null hypothesis has been emerged. So here the idea is, if people are innocent until proven guilty. That's why in most of the cases, null hypothesis, what we assume, there is no relationship, there is no effect of particular action, there is no correlation, or the mean is equal to 0 or the difference is equal to 0. This whole philosophy has been derived from there, and therefore most of the cases we reject the null. But remember, the goal should not be that always reject. Now, what is the falsifiable? Falsifiable says that, and basically it covers all other parts. Whenever you formulate hypothesis, the variables should be well defined, it should be well measured, it should not be ambiguous. The reason is that whatever you have done, the other scholars, they should be able to perform or they should be able to reject your conclusion if they are conducting, or they are able to test. If it is not that, that means your hypothesis do not fall into the category of good hypothesis. Then comes in case of testable. For example, the testable example is this regular attendance, or in terms of, say, for example, I will show you another example, this. Here, this way, our research objective is this, relationship between attending classes and performance. So hypothesis I can write, there is difference in the grades of the students who attend classes or who skips. One way formulate that hypothesis. Another way, students who attend classes have higher grades than students who skip classes. or you can formulate the hypothesis, it doesn't matter whether or not you skip classes. So which one we can use? Which is the good hypothesis? The first one, second one, or the third one? Or let me put the question other way. Can you testify the first hypothesis? Third one, can we testify the third one? Third one we can testify. Is it testable hypothesis? It doesn't matter whether or not you skip classes. So third one is untestable hypothesis. Third one, yes. Second one, first one, both are the testable, and you can form the both. The last one, you cannot test. How you will test? It doesn't matter. What does it mean? Doesn't matter in terms of what? Getting the hall ticket. So that is true at least for AMU right now. Whether you attend the classes, whether you skip the classes, you get the hall ticket. But what about the scores? So it doesn't matter in what sense. That is not clear. So in other cases, we have clear. So we can compare the groups and we can testify that. Then hypothesis, what are the functions we have? Either estimate the population characteristics, or you correlate the variables, or the display differences among two or more populations, so possible cause and effect. This is the four characteristics, four functions you do irrespective of any model you use. Whether the sophisticated model like in econometrics, Bayesian vector autoregression model, or the dynamic conditional correlation statistics, or use simple T statistics and AV statistics. Any test you use, any model you use, in all cases, primarily we see only these four. Either you will show and cause relationship. For example, linear regression. Here we show and cause and effect relationship. For example, Granger causality, we see cause and effect relationship. In other cases, we have. Apart from this, do you formulate hypothesis for any other purpose? इसके अलावा क्या कोई और रिलेशनशिप को हम ढूंढते हैं? If yes, any example? या तो आप ये देखते हैं कि इस particular, for example, in India, literacy rate is 76% that we measure, or the average mortality rate is particular X variable, or whatever, or you correlate if, for example, Manrega has empowered the women, so here finding the relationship, or the display difference among the two or more populations, so we can see the educated people have more cleanliness than the uneducated people. So basically you are comparing the two groups. Or you can say what will have, for example, what is the effect of midday meal on the score or the performance of the student. So here you see the cause and effect relationship of the midday meal on the performance. So any research if you see, you will fall in these four groups here. Then the research hypothesis becomes for two types. One, the research hypothesis we call in general, and we categorize another statistical hypothesis. So let us see what we have. A research hypothesis, basically you make a statement, and those statements can be falsified or can be accepted based on the logical explanation without any observation, without any statistical tool and technique. Those falls into the broad category of research hypothesis. For example, graduate students who read the text in research methods will score higher on their comprehensive exams than graduate students who did not read their research methods text. So this kind of research methods, if so attends, then he will perform better compared to those who do not attend such kind of lectures. So that's basically we formulate a hypothesis. So here we wanted to prove it logically, not by looking any observation. So you can say obviously when in the comprehensive exam, research methodology is one part of the syllabus, and obviously if he attends such kind of classes, he will get to know those ideas, those questions, he may perform better than those people who is. So without, if your argument is like this, Mostly that happens in the philosophical debate, or mostly that happens in the literature, where you prove without any data or any statistical hypothesis. On the other hand, we have the statistical, where we take the data, that I will bring later on. The another type is the directional or non-directional. Here in the simple word, direction, for example, if I say this, the average temperature of Aligarh is different than the average temperature of Lucknow. So that's basically non-directional, because here I am not saying the temperature of Aligarh is more than or less than Lucknow. I am saying simply it is different. It could be more than, it could be less than. So if that is the case, this is non-directional. If I say the temperature of average temperature of Aligarh is more than the Lucknow or less than, then it will be directional. So either we have directional, or we have non-directional. So here we have the different examples. For example, one unique example: cats will bark less frequently than dogs. So here I have less frequently. So obviously it is directional. On the non-directional, for example, men and women will differ in their recall of phone calls, but we are not saying who will answer more. So those are the things. Now here, can you come up with the two directional and two non-directional examples of this hypothesis? Anyone? Two from this side, two from this side. Two directional and two non-directional. डायरेक्शनल नॉन डायरेक्शनल हाइपोथेसिस क्या होता है, ये आप लोग समझे, है ना? तो फिर हम तो यही सवाल कर रहे हैं ना, जो समझ गए उसी को बता दीजिए कि टू डायरेक्शनल, टू नॉन डायरेक्शनल.
Sir, example of directional hypothesis could be that countries who have a democratic form of government are said to be more peaceful than countries who don't have democratic form of governments.
Yes.
So we have implied that they are more peaceful
Yes,
in comparison
peaceful.
to non-democratic.
Anyone else? Non-directional? सर इतने सारे एग्जाम्पल तो हैं आपके पास. Anyone? Anywhere? Hypothesis is basically mathematical, logical. We use any formula we use to testify, to verify that. For example, here when we say go statistical hypothesis, then it becomes a little more. That is, then we have to formulate a null and alternate hypothesis. The null basically what we have usually no relationship we have, and the idea comes from this justice system. So for example, here we have the two samples, so mu1, mu2. So average score of the students who have attended regular classes and average score of the students who are not attending the regular classes. So there is no difference among their scores. So that's the basically we have null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis, no, there will be difference. That difference is not equal to 0. Again, here we have non-directional. I'm not saying that mu1 should be more than mu2 or mu2 should be less than. There is the difference. So who scores better, we don't know. For example, there will be no difference in the, so that's basically I have repeated here. So that is basically, rather there is no relation, statistical difference between the variables or groups. The same thing which already we have discussed here. Then comes the testing of hypothesis. So why we test hypothesis? The reason is this: because we are not able to capture the characteristics of the whole population, so we pick the sample. Now let us say I wanted to see this, whether the average score of this class is more than 7 on the CGP. Then there are the two way. So two people I have hired and they have collected the sample. One got 4, another got 9. So which one I should assume? So based on the 9, I should reject the null, or based on 5, I should reject the null. I am assuming that average score of this group is 7. I asked one guy, so he selected some sample, so his average score is coming now 9. The another people he selected, his score is coming 5. So on which basis I should reject this? Based on the 9 or based on the 5? Based on the 5. Why? 7. So here is the difference of the equal 7, 2 and plus, so minus 2 plus 2. Both the score difference is same. Why I should believe 5? Why so I should not believe 9? Here the reason is this. The first I should ask question why he got the 5 or why he got the 9. So what we call the sample biasness. So the reason could be that those guys who gets 5, he might have captured only those students who are weaker in the class. And though that guy who got 9, he might have captured or sample included only those students who are right in the class. So that means both 9 and 5, this is basically by chance. It is not representing the average. So basically to avoid that, what we have this whole hypothesis testing or statistical approach. So basically what we do, is it that possible our observation, what we are observing, that is by chance? To avoid that, to testify that what we have the whole hypothesis testing. In that case, what we do, the research hypothesis is formulated, then the data is formulated, the sampling strategy, and what we want to able to say as a result, all those affects which kind of test I should use. So what is the hypothesis? For example, if I am running a regression equation, so what I will have, y depends on x1, x2, x3, then my objective here is to see whether all the factors affecting the outcome, then I have to choose the F test. If my objective is, does a single variable, a specific variable is affecting the y dependent variable, then I will use T statistics. So what is the objective? What kind of modeling you are doing? Which kind of distribution you assume? All those effects, which kind of test will assume? There are the different tests, T test, chi-square test, then we have Poisson, then we have F test. So I am not going to fall into that T test, F test, chi-square test. I will show you the simple general steps which is applicable in all the cases. Whether it's a T, whether it's F, whether it's a chi, but we follow the same steps. So basically what we do here, the different tests we have, then comes this type 1 error and type 2 error, because that that has been discussed, type 1 and type 2 error. ये डिस्कस हो चुका है और हाँ या ना? अब तक पढ़ाया गया टाइप 1 टाइप 2 एरर? नहीं. Type 2 error, I will take two examples, one from the girls which often you hear and one from the boys which you often hear. जैसे ये हमारा सोसाइटी का है, not on me, so don't say that I'm gender biased or something, because often we hear in our society, that's I'm replicating here so that it will be easy to understand. For example, आप घर पे अगर रोटी बनाती हैं तो 10 रोटी आपने बनाई, उसमें से 5 गोल नहीं हुआ, तो आपकी अम्मी क्या कहती है कि आपको रोटी बनाने आता है या नहीं आता है? अगर उस 10 में से सिर्फ एक टेढ़ी निकल गई तो क्या बोलेंगे? इनको आती है, एक हो सकता है हो जाए. जस्ट मल्टीप्लाई देम इन द लार्जर स्केल. सो लेट्स गो टू द 100. अगर 100 रोटी है, उसमें से 10 खराब निकल गई तो हम क्या बोलेंगे? किसी के लिए वो होगा कि नहीं ठीक है, ओके, किसी के लिए होगा नहीं. तो बेसिकली दैट्स. अब अगर यहाँ पे क्या हुआ कि उसको रोटी बनाने आती थी और गलती से एक खराब हो गया, लेकिन उसके वजह से आप उसको रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं. क्या मतलब? आती तो है उसको, लेकिन आप रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं, तो इसको बोलेंगे हम वी आर मेकिंग टाइप 1 एरर, कि वो चीज़ सही था कि वो बनाने आती है, लेकिन आपने एक पर्टिकुलर बाई चांस ऑब्जर्वेशन पे रिजेक्ट कर दिया. तो दैट्स बेसिकली टाइप 1 एरर. उसी तरह किसी को फॉर द बॉयज कि फुटबॉल आपको खेलने आता है, You are a very good player in the football, but some particular day might be कि you are not well in the night, so you do not perform well. तो अगर उस गेम के बेसिस पे someone says that he is not a good player, that means you are a good player, that is true, but you are rejecting that. So basically we are making type 1 error. So when null is true, but you reject, then we are making a type 1 error. And when null is true, so basically you will see this. Here, when you have true null, but you are rejecting that, then you are making type 1 error. When it is correct, so your H1 is true and you are reject the null, then it is correct decision. You are making the correct decision. Here the alternate is true, but you are making this correct, so that we will make the type 2 error. When H1 is true, but we are failed to reject that, then we primarily we are concerned with the type 1 error, not to the type 2 error in most of the cases, because usually we fix level of alpha, that is significance, that is the type 1 error. So automatically 1 minus alpha becomes a beta, type 2 error. So why we prefix the level of significance or alpha? The reason is this, again it comes from that courtroom direction. Or there is the two theory we have. Why usually we take the 5% level of significance? One theory is it is coming from the courtroom argument. Another is from a normal psyche we have this. So there is the one whole article on that. For example, you simply have, they have given the example of card. Usually in card what we have 13 red color, 13 black color cards. What in an experiment it has been observed, if you distribute the cards and the first 2 people gets black, no one will doubt. Third person, no one will doubt. Fourth person again gets black, no one will doubt. If fifth person gets black, people starts doubting whether he have both black and red or whether he has only black card. So it has been observed that if something is wrong, if something is making mistake repeatedly 5 times, people start doubting. So that's when we say level of significance is alpha is equal to 5%. So assuming, what we assuming, out of 100 times, even if he makes error 5 times, I will accept his decision. For example, a judge makes 100 decisions. So out of 100, 5 times he convict innocent person. We will continue with that justice system, assuming that it is okay. But if he convicts the 6th person, we will reject that justice system or that justice process. So that's what the level of significance is that, or once we fix that, automatically we get the second here. So let us move on that this level of significance. So once we level of significance do, then comes this probability and the test statistics. Irrespective of which kind of test you use, primarily you will concern with the 3 things. One, this level of significance, which already we have fixed, then the probability value and the test statistics. Here the simple idea is this. Let us say I wanted to see what is the average age of the Indian population we have. So we took the sample of 1000 people, find it out the average age, so that is the 70 years. So when we say test of hypothesis, here what we are assuming, I am repeating that experiment again and again. So I don't have board or anything. Board वगैरह कुछ नहीं है. Anyway, so basically what happens here, you get the test issue. So one sample we got, so that is the 70 years. Basically usually what we do in our practical life, हम जाते हैं सर्वे करते हैं, वहाँ से एज हमने मेन निकाली और हो गया. लेकिन ये जो स्टैटिस्टिकल थियरी है वो इस पे डिपेंड नहीं है. वो ये कहती है कि यू आर कैपेबल टू रिपीट दैट सेम एक्सपेरिमेंट मल्टीपल ऑफ टाइम्स. मल्टीपल ऑफ टाइम्स यू आर कैपेबल टू डू दैट. तो अगर हम 100 टाइम्स रिपीट करते हैं और लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस हमारा क्या है 5%, दैट इज आउट ऑफ 100 5 टाइम्स. तो अगर वो हम सबने सैंपल को रिपीट किया 100 टाइम्स, 95 टाइम्स हमारा क्या आ रहा है कि एवरेज एज इज 70, और 5 टाइम ऐसा आ रहा है जहाँ पे इट इज़ मे बी मोर देन 70 और लेस देन 70. So what we will assume कि because here the probability of occurrence is 95%, we will accept the null. Our average age is 70%. Because here level of significance is 5%, so we will accept that. Now, if level of significance is 1, that is, we are quite strict on that. We are saying even one time it goes wrong, we will not accept. So in that case, we will reject the null. No, average age of Indian population is not 70. So that's basically what we have. Now repeat, तो क्या होगा? क्या guarantee कि हर time हमारा 70 आएगा? Is it guaranteed that we will get the 70? Mostly you will not get the 70. Maybe one time you got the 70, other time maybe 69, 68, 69.9, 68.7. So that's what we have. We have the distribution of the repeated sampling. And from that distribution, from this fact that we may not be able to get exactly 70 every time. So we draw that graph here like this bell-shaped curve. And from that, we have this idea of rejection region and the acceptance region. And that again falls into that p-value category. For example, 5%. So 2.5 I will put the left, 2.5 I put the right. If it is the two-tailed test, or without board, it is difficult to say that. So anyway, basically we will have bell-shaped curve. So you will fix that if it falls within this region, then I will accept. If it is fall more than that region, then we will reject. And that you can analogy can be given by this the football net. कि जब हम टेस्ट प्रैक्टिस करते हैं तो क्या हर बार ये तय करते हैं कि फुटबॉल गोल पे हो? आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट नॉट मैच, अबाउट द टेस्ट प्रैक्टिस. जब आप प्लेयर को जाओगे, कोच को पूछोगे कि दे मे नॉट मेक श्योर दैट एवरी टाइम शुड फॉल इनटू द नेट. वो ये देखता है अगर नेट के आसपास भी आ रहा है तो ही में स्कोर इन द फाइनल मैच. वो एक प्रोबेबिलिटी रखती है कि किस रेंज में जाएगी. तो सेम लाइक दे वी फिक्स दैट दिस इज ए नेट बॉल विच इज बेसिकली मिनिमम एंड द मैक्सिमम. Here 70 is in the main, 70 plus 2, let us say 72 is the higher, less than 70, let us say 68 is the lower. So if it is falls between 68 to 72, we'll accept that our mean population is 70. If it is more than 72 or less than 68, we will not believe on this, then we'll believe that this is by chance or by occurrence we have the 70. Otherwise, the average age of the Indian population is different. Range either from 0 or maximum 1. So it is close to 0, that means what we are assuming? The occurrence of null is close to 0. इसका मतलब we will reject the null. Close to 1, that means more chances to have or occur the null, so we will accept the null. So simple rule, if your p close to 0, reject the null. If it is close to 1, accept the null. So that's the case, simple. Now how much close? That depends on the level of significance. Say when significance is 5%. So if it is goes beyond 0.5, we say that it is close to 1. But the rule remains the same. Close to 0, reject the null. Close to 1, accept the null. Yes. Now the question is, p value is exact level of significance you will get, you will reject, able to reject. Other way which is more easy to remember is this. And this is not exact rule, what we call the rule of thumb. And that is valid for any test statistics for any model. If your number of observation is more than 20, so whatever experiment do, if your number of observation is more than 20, and whatever t value, whatever the test statistic use, if that value is more than 2, you reject the null, whatever. There is no need to compare the critical value, the tabulated. Simple rule is this. If your calculated value is more than 2 and your number of observation is more than 20, you reject the null. That will be the simple rule. So that's the, I think I will stop it here. And after that, I will take the questions if you have specific. If you have any specific questions, please ask. Yes, please. No. So that is obvious. Let us say what happens even, and a lot of people are concerned that so I should have the hypothesis, I should have the research objective. I will tell you my case. In my thesis, I don't have any hypothesis, I don't have any research objective. It doesn't mean there is no. But in the more scientific way is this, you have the research question, you have the hypothesis. Now let us say I wanted to see this. Manrega has empowered the women. So basically my hypothesis will be regarding this. Manrega doesn't have any effect on the women empowerment. So women empowerment I measure with the how much power she has on the financial happening or the financial assets. That is the measure. Then one independent factor is whether she works in Manrega or not. So are there no other, for example, education, doesn't it affect the women empowerment? Does it have women education? Does it have any power? It has the education, family background that may have effect. So when we are running the regression, what we do? We have women empowerment variable. Then we have the Manrega, whether she works in Manrega or not. Then we have the family background. We may have the level of education. But our hypothesis here is Manrega doesn't have any effect of empowerment. Does it mean that we do not interpret other two variables? We do interpret. Are there the, do we have hypothesis about those two variables? We do not have here. So it does not mean that if we do not have hypothesis, we will not have impact or we will not be able to explain. Because you have one research question, one research hypothesis, but we are doing that modeling, you will have other variables also. So it is not necessary that for every variable you will have to have the hypothesis. Anyone else?
Already told us about type 1 error and type 2 error. Can you briefly explain about type 3 error as well?
Type 3, I think I will not be explained here.
Yes, sir.
I will not be able to comprehend here, type 3.
Okay, sir.
How we decide the critical value, normal distribution curve, how we decide the critical value and what is the, how we decide that critical value.
What is the critical? So,
in a normal distribution curve.
In the normal distribution, see that depends entirely on how much level of significance you are getting. So it falls upon that because normal distribution curve is nothing. It is given that if you have level of significance, how it will be distributed, isn't it? If it is 5%, then what will be the case? The 10%, what will be the case? So what will be the critical value? Whether it's 5%, the 10%. It depends on the whether what is the level of significance you have, how much error you are allowing or permitting in the justice system or permitting in your experiment. So that entirely depends on the scholars whether he wants to be very strict. Even one is out of frame, I will not accept that. Whether maybe the 10 I will allow that, yes.
Maximum critical value से ज़्यादा होगा तो accept करेंगे, reject करेंगे.
Calculated value should be more than the tabulated value, critical value. Then we will reject. And again remember here, for example, 5% in convenient way most of the people do. But again, it depends on what kind of research you are doing. For example, think about the medical experiment. For example, someone has developed the cancer, so he wanted to see that how much it has effect on that. So even if it is 15% or even it goes 20%, that it will be accepted. The reason is that out of 100, at least 80% people will get benefit from that. So it depends on which kind of experiment you do, which kind of problem you are facing here. So it entirely depends on that. लेकिन हमारे केसेस में क्या हो गया ना कि जब हम रिसर्च पेपर पढ़ते हैं, हम अपने स्ट्रीम का पढ़ते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल हम क्या पढ़ते हैं कि सोशल साइंस, आर्ट्स एंड ऑल, तो उसमें हम we usually often encounter 5%, 1% and 10%. So sometimes what happens, even if it goes beyond 50%, we reject. Remember that is not the case. For example, earlier, if you see the earlier research, when data was not rich, people have accepted even in 40% in economics. So it depends which kind of hypothesis you have, which kind of experiment you are doing, what is the importance of that experiment. For example, think about that midday meal scheme. Midday meal scheme, so we got the probability value 20. So that means out of 100, 20 times it is false. So we are accepting the null. Midday meal doesn't have effect on the performance. Is it wise to accept that, to get that conclusion? Will it have any effect on the policy? अगर हम ये policy makers को जाके बोले कि you reject, we accept the null, कि there is no effect of midday meal on the performance of the students. Is it good conclusion? No, because at least 80 students get benefited. So it depends which kind of problem. So even though we have 20, we'll reject the null here. Because here is the idea is that if from this social program, a larger bunch of people are getting the benefit. So it depends on what motive you have, what kind of implication it will have, how much you are allowing, it all depends on those things. Yes, it depends. For example, I made that regular thing. It is non-testable, but you change the definition of the variable, it could be not testable. For example, let us say this. Intelligence has effect on score. So how you will measure the intelligence? The problem was coming, there is no measure of intelligence. Later on, people developed some test, what we call the IQ test. So earlier, this test was untestable hypothesis. Now, since we have measure of that particular variable, it is testable. So it depends on whether you will be able to measure or not.
Does every accepted hypothesis significant?
Every
Accepted hypothesis.
Yes.
If hypothesis is accepted, significant only, or it can be considered as any other result.
Accepted on what ground?
If we are accepted a hypothesis, then it is called to be significant statement.
Accept the hypothesis.
I attended a pre-submission recently. There the topic of discussion was is the statement is writing the significant word is correct or not.
Yes, there is the two way. Usually what we do, here is the one example, very good example for this we have. For example, we reject the null actually and we accept the alternate. So why we write we may reject. We do not write we reject. What we write, we may reject, or we write that alternative hypothesis is statistically significant. That's what we write, statistically significant, then we make the interpretation. Reason is this, we are rejecting the null based on how many experiments? Reason based on how many experiments? One experiment. We are saying that the null is not true. Just think about this. There is a pond, so someone went there and he tried to catch a fish, but he was not able to catch the fish. So here we have the null hypothesis this. There is no fish in that particular pond. So can we reject or can we accept null? So there is the pond. So one guy went there, for fishing. He was not able to catch the fish. So he returned. Here the null hypothesis is what we have. There is no fish in the pond. So should we accept or should we reject?
Sir, in this case, in that case, that is the problem for formation of hypothesis. If
Yes.
we can't able to say it's significant or it's
So no, what conclusion we will take based on this observation? So there is the fish in the pond. So that is the null hypothesis we have. He was not able to catch, so we'll reject the null hypothesis, isn't it? So there was fish, so we rejected, so there is no fish. Why we are not able to say that we are rejecting, rather than we are saying we are accepting the alternate hypothesis? Reason is this. He was not able to catch the fish. Could be that he got a net which has larger sphere compared to fish are the smallest, or fish may be in the underlying area, but he tried on the surface only. So there is the possibility of alternate regions. Therefore, whenever we reject the null hypothesis, we say we may reject, because we are putting may considering this particular situation. I am rejecting the null hypothesis in this special case. And the falsifiability or testability comes from that. You did on the specific characteristics, you change that, your result may change. And that scope remains always there. Therefore, we do not outrightly reject the null. We write, we may reject the null hypothesis. That's the case. Anyone else? Any question from this side? Let me conclude by saying this statement, making here observation. What we have, I have made observation since last 4 years in my AMU. ये किस चीज़ का क्लास है? वर्कशॉप रिसर्च मेथोलॉजी का. In research methodology, first thing what you did, formulation of. सबसे पहले चीज हम क्या करते हैं? सबसे पहले रिसर्च प्रॉब्लम करते हैं ना. फाइंड आउट द रिसर्च. यू हैव सम क्वेश्चन. Based on that, you try to formulate research, the literature review, whole thing. Then you specify your research question, then research hypothesis, then collection of data, then observation, then the interpretation. But how it started? It started with some doubt, some question, isn't it? That was the initiation point. For any research, you have first initiation, either doubt or question or some you have. लेकिन इंटरेस्टिंग बात यहाँ है, ये है यहाँ भी क्वेश्चन हमें कम मिलते हैं, या क्लासेस में भी जब हम पढ़ाते हैं तो हमें क्वेश्चन कम मिलते हैं. आप कुछ भी कह दीजिए. जैसे मैं क्लास में अक्सर झूठ बोलता हूँ. मैं अपने जब रेगुलर टीचिंग क्लास कोर्सेज का लेता हूँ उसमें अक्सर झूठ बोलता हूँ. तो अगर मैं झूठ भी बोल दिया, जैसे इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ाता हूँ, मैं क्लास में अगर ये बोल दूँ कि डिमांड कर्व अपवर्ड स्लोपिंग होता है, तब भी बच्चे बोलते हैं जी सर. कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं करता कि सर आपने ये गलत कहा. ये फैक्ट है. अब एक बंदा एमए में है या बीए सेकेंड ईयर थर्ड ईयर में, इतना तो समझ गया कि भाई लॉ ऑफ डिमांड या डिमांड कर्व डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग होता है. आप जाके क्लास में बोल दिए नहीं ये अपवर्ड स्लोपिंग होता है, तब भी कोई कुछ नहीं बोलेगा. बोलेगा जी. यार बेसिकली ट्राई टू क्वेश्चन. क्वेश्चन करने से ऐसा नहीं होता है कि बस. देयर इज द टू वे. क्वेश्चन वन इज टू लर्न, अनदर क्वेश्चन इज टू डीमीन. ट्राई टू अवॉइड द डीमीनिंग क्वेश्चन and try to learn. Question should be based to learn rather than intention should be deeming. क्योंकि देखो knowledge perfect नहीं है. No one knows the perfect knowledge. Even me, I am here because maybe I was little early started my career, so I am here. Maybe after maybe the next year or maybe the second year you will be here. So that's the different case here. तो लेकिन क्वेश्चन होना चाहिए, या जो कहा जा रहा है एटलीस्ट वी आर नॉट अंडरस्टैंड, लेट अस स्पीक. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि इफ यू आर आस्किंग क्वेश्चन, देयर मे बी 10 पीपल अदर दे हैव द सेम डाउट बट दे आर नॉट एबल टू से दैट. सो बेसिकली यू हेल्प अदर 10 पीपल्स. सो दैट शुड बी द इंटेंशन, दैट शुड बी द अप्रोच. तो क्लास में हो या यहाँ हो, कहीं भी क्वेश्चन करो. एज फार एज आई नो कि मोस्ट ऑफ द टीचर्स दे डू नॉट बिकम एंग्री और दे डू नॉट गेट इरिटेटेड. अब क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं तो ऐसा नहीं है. hardly, obviously 1%, एक आध percent वो होता है, you will observe in the beginning of the class itself. So should I assume there will be some question, or should I assume there is no question? Yes.
So when a research scholar working on research gap or a research question not on a statistical parameter, so what do you think on the basis of observation, can the research be provable or the testable?
Can the research be proven by?
Provable and the testable on the basis of observation only.
On the basis of observations only.
Yes.
See, that's what I told. There are two cases. One, the research hypothesis in general where based on observation, based on the logic, based on the argument, you can prove. For example, court proceedings. Do you have any statistical data? No. For example, this is the hypothesis. He is innocent. So you prove or reject based on the logical arguments. Rather than most of the times we don't have any statistical significance. So that is also testable hypothesis. So that is based on the observations. But if there is a scope of statistical hypothesis, then we use that. Now here the two types of argument is there. Some people they say, no, if you are doing scientific study, it should be based not on the observations, because observations are often, I am not telling 100%, but often is subjective. So the scientific inquiry do not believe on the subjectivity, rather than it believes on the objectivity. So one group of the scholars, they argue that this hypothesis testing or the proof of the research hypothesis should not be based on the observation, because observations mostly are subjective. But some group of people say no, it should be subject to subject case. So there are both arguments, and it depends on which stream you are, which kind of formulation you do.
Sir, is this also a fact that only scientific researchers have hypothesis, descriptive research cannot?
Again, it depends. For example, say it is literature. So for example, John Elia, most of the people you might have heard. Have you heard John Elia's name? John Elia. So you might have heard. So earlier no one cared about his poetry and all. Now a lot of people are talking about his poetry and all. So let us say, do you think his literature has any effect on the understanding of Urdu or the propagation of Urdu among the young generation? So how you will prove that? So there is the both way. You can prove by looking. So you go ask the people from where you got to know the Urdu language. You say from this John Elia, then you have all the data observation. Or by simple observation you can make most of the young people, if they talk about the Urdu, they give the reference of the John Elia. So by looking at that. So for example, how many people have did study on that? Young people are attracted towards poetry because of the John Elia. A lot of people are talking. For example, Anwar Maqsood from the Pakistan, he talks about that. The young people has been attracted towards Urdu, not because of the Ghalib or something, but because of the John Elia in the recent last 2 decades or 3 decades. So he has any data on that? That's based on the observation. So we can do. And it's not necessary, so when we say descriptive statistics or descriptive research, what does it mean? When we say descriptive research, उससे आप क्या कहते हैं? किसका inference आता है? What do you think about that? When we say descriptive research, describe something. Basically, if you go to statistics, when we say descriptive, basically you are trying to capture some of the basic characteristics of any population, isn't it? For example, हम अगर ये कह दें कि this, so let me make, I think South Indians is not more here, so I can take that freedom. For example, what we say, South Indians, they believe North Indians language, a way of speaking is harsh. So how we do speak, that is harsh. So basically what he did, he describes the whole population based on simple characteristic, how we speak or what is the tone of our language. So this is nothing. If you do the research, is it true? So that is nothing but the descriptive statistics or the descriptive research we have. So most of the literature you see or most of the history you see, mostly that is, for example, the So a whole lot of people who talked about the Mohenjo-daro or that civilization, Mohenjo-daro civilization, at what time this was the characteristic, how they did it, based on the descriptive. So he got a site, then he found, based on that he described that society. So that is the descriptive. So there is not necessary that there should not be hypothesis or there should not be hypothesis. It depends again on what kind of problem you have, what is your intention you have. So I think I will stop here because 4:30 I have some other meetings, so I will go there. So thank you so much, and I must acknowledge and say sorry is because of this. I was not well prepared for this lecture because since last 2-3 days I did not get much time. So why I am saying sorry? If you commit someone, you should prepare. So sorry for that. I was not well prepared. So here. So whatever randomly I got that, I described it here. So I took your time without the preparation. Sorry for that. And thank you so much being here and listening my lecture. So,
do we have any questions? Thank you, sir, for this very insightful lecture. Now I request Mr. Newton Mandal to kindly present a workshop kit to our resource person. Mr. Newton Mandal. Thank you, Newton. Now I request InCharge organizing team, Mr. Faizan Shabir, to kindly present a memento to our esteemed resource person. Mr. Faizan Shabir. Faizan is actually working under Dr. Zulquar, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being with us. It was indeed a treat to listen to your lecture. We will take a short break and we will have tea in common room and we'll be back in a short while. Thank you.